right. Hi, I am Carla Lauder. I am the editor of Geo Week, and we have John Kedar here today. He's going to talk to us a little bit about geospatial data and this current crisis with COVID-19, kind of past, present, and future, what we can do with this going forward. So, John, do you want to take a moment and just kind of introduce yourself, give us a little background about who you are?
Yeah, hi Carla, and thanks for this talk. It's fantastic to be invited. I'm John Kedar, and I'm in the UK, based not too far from London, but in the countryside, where I'm well away so far from the effects of COVID-19. But my background is largely in the military, with trying to grapple with big decisions in short spaces of time and incomplete information, and very much led the military geospatial response in places like Afghanistan and so on for the UK. And then I spent time with the National Mapping Agency in the UK Ordnance Survey, and now I work independently, privately, advising governments around the world.
Great. So, that's kind of where I want to start is, for governments and local organizations, like what are some of the challenges that they're grappling with in terms of getting, geospatial information, getting it to the right people? What are they really kind of facing that they weren't expecting to face or that's really difficult for them?
I think the key thing, doesn't matter what level of decision making you're making, is understanding. And there's a lot of talk about what's going on, but what they're really trying to make decisions on is something that's going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks' time. What impact is a lockdown going to have in 2 or 3 weeks? And it's that getting ahead of the curve, predicting with data, is their key challenge. The current situation is great; it helps you solve media problems, but really the decision making is about 2 or 3 weeks out.
And, I saw that you had written a nice post on LinkedIn too about, kind of the varying ways in which you can convey information either to the public or to governments and some of the pitfalls and the opportunities there. Can you speak a little to kind of some of maybe the better practices or some things that you've seen in how information is being conveyed?
Yeah, it's a good question, Carla, because you've got to hit all sorts of audiences. When you're presenting information, you're hitting an academic audience on the one hand, and then you're hitting people that are often scared, vulnerable, lonely, locked up in their own homes. And so trying to get information across is massively difficult. And you have to keep repeating things. But maps have always, and pictures have always helped get information across massively. They've helped people understand what the risks are in a particular area, where they live, for example. So geospatial mapping of any description helps, and a lot of applications are out there providing that. But they are just a picture of the current, and often they're not portrayed particularly well, because, clearly if you look at a heat map, for example, what you see are the big cities, because it's the big cities being hit. And a little bit more thought into how a heat map is used and how things are portrayed might actually help people get better information. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, the really good practice, which I think we can explore a bit more, is this whole area of using all the technology we've got available now for the first time ever to try and predict where things are going. And that moves us much more into the academic space. It moves us into trying to help the political decision makers. And that's an area I think we are doing well, and I think in the future could do even better.
So when you say, using more of those technologies, what types of technologies are you talking about that are kind of on the forefront of this?
Yeah, well, let me give you a couple of examples. So the UK's National Health Service, in recognising it needed to move forward, has grouped together with several of the big cloud providers, with AI specialists, and indeed with defence intelligence specialists from the commercial sector, to try and bring together all of those different technologies to understand where if you like, where the problems are going to be in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and then move the necessary health resources to those areas in advance. Another example is an American company based out of Washington, DC, Geospatial Analytics. And they have for a long time played with trawling the media automatically, obviously, and trying to see what people are talking about in the media and where things are happening and where you start to get new hits on something. Indeed, they predicted and they identified things happening in Wuhan back in December, based on their geospatial approach to big data across a variety of media sources. So there's another example, and of course, with that sort of thing, they can start to predict where things are starting to get bad before the official statistics show.
And we've seen, there was an example here in the US, and I can't remember the name of the company that had provided the information, but we have also seen measures just plotted by companies who are aggregating cell phone data to try to figure out who and where social distancing is being followed, and where it may be followed less, or where there are kind of target areas for that. And there was a little bit of an outcry because I don't think people realized that they could get, this aggregate data from their cell phone. So is there also a balance between balancing the privacy of some of that data versus, that safety aspect of, really trying to keep everybody safe?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and actually maybe there's a moving scale here. Maybe in times of normality, ethics and privacy moves one way, but in times of crisis, that privacy has to be turned down for the greater good, for the greater good across not just our countries, but actually worldwide. And that's a very delicate piece. You're absolutely right. I mean, at the moment, people are accepting a little bit more intrusion. And in some countries in the world, because they're used to that, that intrusion goes an awful lot further. And we've all seen the stories coming out of China. And this isn't about intrusion, but it's about the way they've used technology to understand where everyone is, to track down people that might have been in contact with people with COVID-19 and so on. Now, that might be a bit unacceptable in UK or USA, but we've got to understand how far we can move the balance here. And my view is, in this privacy world, we've got to accept there's a moving scale, and in times of crisis, we move it slightly further one way than we'd normally do.
So that kind of goes into my next question, which is, what can the geospatial community in particular kind of learn from this experience, this unprecedented situation? What are some of maybe the missteps that we can learn from, or some of the things that we've, been able to do that maybe we haven't been able to do before?
I think at the technical level, I won't go there, because at the technical level, people are doing great things. They're using GIS software, they're using AI, they're using all sorts of things to try and get to solutions. I think my perspective is more that we need to think in the same way defense thinks at the moment, in terms of you have a big command and control system that defense is going to procure. You start with the requirements. What do we need it to do? Not what software's on the market, but what is it we're trying to achieve? What's our requirement here? And in the health world, we actually do the same sort of thing. In this epidemiology world, we actually start with what do we really need in terms of information, decisions, systems, and then we look to big partnership type procurements to do health defense in the same way that we do defense in a more traditional world. And why is that important? Well, it's important because, this COVID-19 is only one of many outbreaks. It's the most serious we've seen, but we've had SARS, we've had H1N1, I think it was called. We've had Ebola, we've had different things. This is going to keep coming back and hitting us. So that's the first thing is, I think our procurement needs to change. That's not a geospatial thing, that's a government thing. I think the second thing from a geospatial perspective is we've got to get on the front foot. We are very good at reacting here, but maybe a group of our big companies, along with other data companies and health organizations, have got to get together after this and really investigate, put money in and really investigate what we can do on a geospatial basis. Working in partnership. So we're no longer on the back foot, but we are able to show the art of the possible. And I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. And I think the time to do it would be ahead of the next G20 summit. Yeah. Because in reality, I think it's going to be the G20 nations that are going to have to lead the solutions to this in the long term. We can't just rely on WHO, we can't rely on the United Nations. We've got to have a leadership role here and then roll it out more, whatever it is, more globally. So I think there's a great opportunity at the next G20 summit, perhaps ahead of that geospatially, to really look at how, as a group of geospatial companies, as governments, we can work together to really help solve these problems. But I do think, Carla, there is great work going on in the geospatial community. I would never ever knock that. People are putting their hearts into this, but I think we can do better by getting ahead of the game and working out how we can use our technologies to really predict the next outbreak.
And kind of also in the more near term, what's next? What are the next steps? Where are we going in the next couple of weeks in terms of what needs to be done and where things are still at? It's been a lot of assessing where we've been, but we still have to move forward and kind of go back to what we're doing eventually as a society. So what's coming up next?
Well, we're all working out where the health problems are going to be next. That's what we're doing geospatially with other data. That's our challenge. Actually, what's going to happen next are the consequences. We know about the economic ones; they're reported widely, and geospatial already plays into helping economies. We're going to have to work out how we can reopen economies, how people can move again. That's a network thing, but it's geospatial again. How do we start allowing people to move and go around their daily business? There's an absolute geospatial play. But I'd like to take us to some of the developing nations where they live day to day, where agriculture, getting loans for agriculture is very difficult. So you grow your crops, you sell them, that buys the seeds and fertilizers for the next crop. If that agriculture is not getting to market at the moment, and those farmers are not going to have the money to grow crops for the next cycle. So there's a real danger, I think, if we're not careful, that the humanitarian disaster could become something different in the months to come. And again, geospatially, remote sensing can start really monitoring what is happening in the fields across the world. Are the crops being harvested, let go to waste? Are new crops being planted where they need to be? So I think there's a real role geospatial can play in helping look to that particular problem set that might arise if we're not careful.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight in this, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. I hope to have you on again later on once we've gone a little further, maybe down this road. But thank you so much for sharing this, and I hope that some of those questions that we've posed here, kind of come to fruition as we go forward.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Carla, and best wishes to you and best wishes to all your viewers and readers over the coming months.
Thank you.